All right, and welcome back to Alternative Discussion West, the podcast. This is your host, Ryan Banks, and you have tuned in to episode number 19. Excited to have you guys back. Of course, you can find us on YouTube and iTunes and wherever podcasts are available. My guest today is an old friend, a dear friend from same old hometown of Oakley, California. Hey, Mr. James Creston, what's going on, man?
Hey, Ryan.
Welcome to the studio, man. Glad to have you out. So you said you were born in Concord, huh?
Born in Concord. That's right. Concord, California. Mount Diablo Hospital back in the day.
Right on. Right out here in this same old neck of the woods. And then you grew up in that area?
I've spent just a little bit of time there in the Concord-Clayton area, if I remember correctly. I mean, I was like 1 year old, but ended up eventually making it out to Nebraska. And father was, taking jobs where he could at the time as a programmer.
It was early days of computer programming, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. They didn't even have color computer screens back then.
The green screen.
Then my younger brother was born, Daniel, and he had some issues with his hips, and we had to come back for some surgery that he needed. And my grandfather was a surgeon himself. Not for that type of surgery, but he knew some pediatric orthopedic surgeons that were able to repair his hips, and a lot of care was needed. They thought he wouldn't walk, and that's how we ended up back in Pittsburgh.
So you moved out of Nebraska.
Yep.
And headed back over this way.
That's
here
correct.
To the Bay Area, ended up in Pittsburgh. And now is that where you end up going to elementary school?
Yeah, started at Beller Elementary, kindergarten, first, second grade, and third grade.
And what's life like in Pittsburgh Bay Point at that time?
At that time, and at that age, you're so wide-eyed, you're just, everything's a wonder to you. And now when I go back to those areas, I think, holy crap, man, I can't believe that I lived in some of those neighborhoods.
A little different than you remembered them.
Definitely, but when I think back and I'm like, I can remember people, and now I understand, like, oh, those people lived outside. I would walk by them on the way to school and just, they're camping, but now I walk by them like, oh.
It was a little bit different.
A little bit different,
Different than you had imagined then.
Yeah.
So normal childhood growing up, though?
Pretty normal, yeah.
You had a couple brothers?
3 brothers. My oldest brother, Paul, 10 years older than me, so good age gap there. And he was always kind of like, my bodyguard, my defender, always looking out for me.
Cool older brothers?
Really cool older brothers, yeah.
Were they cool to you? Like you thought they were the coolest people?
How brothers can be, there's a lot of conflict, a lot of butting heads and, beating on each other and blaming things on each other. But a lot of love there and a lot of respect, always looking out for one another ultimately.
Now, any musicianship in the family?
My uncle... 2 of my uncles, my Uncle Nick Amador and my Uncle Ramiro Amador, actually were very prominent musicians in the Bay Area. My Uncle Ramiro played bass in a band called the PhDs in Pittsburgh.
Wow,
for a long time.
Does he still play with them?
No, I'm pretty sure that they still play around, but I think that he's not playing with them anymore.
Okay, yeah, I do see that name occasionally out here.
That is an old name.
Yeah.
I mean, they were like the regular band at La Plaza over there off Summersville.
Oh, the old Mexican restaurant.
Exactly.
They're off Summersville.
Yeah, so he played bass guitar, and he was a huge inspiration when I got to that point in my life when I started playing bass. And then my Uncle Nick, I can't recall any of the... I mean, he played in some of the same groups, but he played saxophone, and he was another big inspiration for me during my sort of woodwind and brass, era.
Sure. So you saw these guys growing up playing music.
Exactly.
At family parties, and these guys were around.
Right. And very, very professional and very talented. So that was the bulk of the musical influence. My mother married a musician too, who also played in some of the same bands that those guys did. Bob Castelblanc. He's passed away, but he was a huge influence as well.
So a lot of music in the family, and then you kind of get into grade school, and then what instruments do you pick up? Is that right into the winds?
That's right. I was had my heart set on the saxophone, alto sax, in the 4th grade. And, of course, we get to the music store, and they're like, there ain't none to rent, so you're playing the clarinet.
Got stuck with something not quite as cool.
Right. Yeah, but at the time, I was just excited to be exploring something new, something to learn. And not to brag, but, in the 4th grade, I made it to first chair pretty quick.
Yeah. So you picked up very quickly on the instruments.
Yeah. And sight reading music came almost naturally to me. And it was a good indication that this is something that's going to be with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it was probably exciting to be able to pick up that quick.
Exactly.
A lot of kids probably started a lot earlier, and then you just walked right in.
Right. And I think that for some people, when they get into a new instrument, and I see this with guitar a lot, is maybe they don't have a properly playing instrument, and it's more challenging than it needs to be.
Sure, yeah.
So,
not having the right equipment.
Exactly. And fortunately for me, my mother was, very adamant about making sure I had what I needed.
Yeah.
And that way I could pursue these.
So you had a decent clarinet is what you're saying?
Yeah.
To take that on. Awesome. So
I think it was a Bundy.
Right on. So outside of the clarinet, I mean, what do you start playing?
Musically or other instruments?
Sure, yeah, other instruments.
In school, it's all classical stuff, right? And all the way up until 7th grade, I was playing the clarinet when Mr. Rodriguez over at O'Hara Park was like, well, we have way too many clarinets, so I'm going to put you on trumpet. And so I swapped over to the trumpet in 7th grade.
Picked up the brass, no problem?
Picked up the brass, no problem. Had a great time playing. And Mr. Rodriguez, at some point during 7th grade, found out that I played guitar, or that I was learning to play guitar. And so he decided to take me off trumpet and put me on bass guitar. And so I started learning to play bass guitar, started to learn to read bass clef, and that
all came real natural as well.
Yeah, it did. I remember it being so easy to learn as a child.
Now, where does the guitar come from?
Well,
you didn't have family members playing the guitar in the house?
Nope. It's kind of an interesting story. When I was, I think, about 12 years old, I remember having this really awkward conversation with my father, he was out of the picture by that time. But I remember he called me up, and he was probably a little inebriated, and he was feeling down, and he kind of just told me this story about how sad it is to just be an adult and to be alone.
So growing up is harder. He gave you the details as to how hard growing up is at an early age.
Exactly, and he made an emphasis on guitar players maybe will not have this problem, and he's like, you need to learn to play guitar so that way you can meet women.
I think he had your best interests in mind.
He was doing what he could.
It could create community for you.
Exactly.
And give you something, a passion.
Certainly. There's a bigger picture there, right?
Sure.
The way that he articulated it was maybe not so great, but look what it turned into.
Yeah, sure. Probably had the best behind it. Yeah. So he ended up buying you a guitar at that point?
Yeah. I think he sent my mother, some money to help pay for it, and she had a friend who had a guitar that her son wasn't playing, and it was this 1980s Yamaha with a tremolo on it, like a Stratocaster style tremolo, nothing special. One pickup in it. It was bright, like lipstick red, like the brightest red you could imagine, like something from the 80s. And I fell in love with it. And
you were playing that thing every day?
Every day.
So about 6th or 7th grade, you went from playing the instruments in the band and then moving on to the guitar.
Exactly. Yep.
And so Mr. Rodriguez ends up offering you what, playing the guitar?
Well,
or what's his idea?
He needed a bass player for the jazz band. Actually, there was a real sweet gal named Amy Jimerson who was playing bass while I was on trumpet. And then I think that she was leaving band in 8th grade, and so there was a vacancy, and so I slid in and filled that vacancy as the bass player for the jazz band.
And that was the concert jazz band?
Yep.
So you guys were playing...
Yeah, playing all sorts of... Mr. Rodriguez loved the Beatles, so he did a lot of Beatles tunes, like a Hard
play a little
Day's
rock
Night.
and roll.
Yeah, and it was great because it gave me some structure to playing the stringed instrument.
And what else are you, when you first pick up the guitar, what kind of songs are you looking at playing?
Oh, man.
I mean, what are you learning? Because you're just playing with yourself. Nobody's there. Nobody's there. Kind of instructing you.
I fortunately had a class with Aaron Younce and Miss Wright's 7th grade math class. And, of course, we did math by writing out tablature of Metallica songs, and he would write these songs out for me, and then I'd go home and learn.
So you're writing tabs back and forth in class, passing them back and forth.
Yeah, he was really good about tabbing things out. Like he's got like that memory, just that iron memory there. Like everything sticks to it like a magnet, and so he was able to
he's writing this Metallica sheet music from his head.
From his head, just putting it down and like, all right, go home and learn this and come back. And that's kind of how our friendship started. We had this commonality of music, and I think that he saw that there was some potential there because I had kind of this. I mean, when you think about it, for 8th grade, as someone who's been playing music for 4 years, since they were.
Yeah, you got a deep understanding of music at that age.
Yeah,
even just with a few years.
There's potential, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And so you're introduced to him. He's playing Metallica. So you start learning those songs. And what else are you playing at that time?
And my older brother Robert's friend, who was also named Robert, he had tried playing guitar and had some books. And I remember the first books that I actually were handed were the tab books for Stone Temple Pilots' album Core. And for,
great album.
For Bush's 16 Stone.
Now that's a true classic, the 16 Stone. So you're learning, the whole album?
Yeah.
Learning the bass, the guitar, everything in there.
At home it was focusing on guitar. Bass, since I was learning to read sheet music, in the bass clef, so bass didn't read tabs. But on guitar, for some reason, I always remember struggling to correlate that treble clef staff to the guitar fretboard. It always confused me, so I just didn't bother. Just stuck with reading tabs on guitar, which you would think like it should cross right over. But since I was so deep into reading bass music, it
wasn't easy to cross over.
It wasn't easy
at that point,
right?
So so about 7th or 8th grade is when you start playing as a band, or you have that idea. As soon as you learn a couple songs, you got to get together with someone, right?
It got exciting to talk to other musicians who had an interest in the same music, and it kind of all came together in 8th grade. I remember we had like this 8th grade talent show, and
this is at O'Hara Park School.
Yeah, at O'Hara Park, the 8th grade talent show. Drew Cueva and Joe Lane and a third guy, which I'm failing to recall his name right now, but they had a little show that they put together. They were playing one song. And then Aaron Younce and Jason Honecker, they did a Jimi Hendrix tribute.
And you were there to witness that.
I was there. For some reason, I was like a stagehand, so I was moving mics and helping them move gear.
Tuning the guitar.
And Mr. Macedo, who is the drama teacher, was putting it on. And I remember he forgot to put the mic up on Aaron's stand during their set, so I had to run out from the back and hop down on the floor and grab the mic off the floor and then hop back up on the stage and throw it on his mic stand so he could actually play and sing,
So you did serve a purpose then.
Yeah.
So you were the stagehand there
right.
in 8th grade, and then you decided, I've got to get in on this.
Right. Yeah. That was really the first time that Drew and I kind of recognized the fact that both of us have an interest in the same kind of music, and I had known Drew from band because he had played saxophone,
and then now you see him up there rocking the drums,
and I'm like, yeah, this is going to be cool, like we should definitely get together and see what we can play. And
and he liked that idea right away.
Yeah, he was open to it, which I'm thankful for.
So into 8th grade, you guys are getting ready to go into high school. You guys start meeting up regularly and jamming.
Yeah, absolutely. He, in the back of his house over there on 4th Street in Oakley, he had his drum set up. I'd bring over my little Fender Deluxe and my...
And how big of an amp are you bringing over?
Oh, well, for a Fender Deluxe, it was 100 watt with 112 in it. It was in a combo.
But it screamed.
Oh, yeah. I mean...
Plenty of noise for a house.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had my, like a 1994 Mexican Strat, black with a white pick guard and a rosewood fretboard and a maple neck. And
you guys kind of go right into playing those songs you had learned.
I'm
Stone
sure
Temple Pilots.
Enter Sandman, yeah. From Stone Temple Pilots, I'm sure we did things like sex type things.
You had to have done Machine Head by Bush, right?
That and Glycerine and Come Down and...
So kind of right into the harder rock and the alternative, the grunge, the stuff that's going on at that time.
Yep.
And this is what year?
This would have been 97, 98, 99.
Okay, and so it starts off just as you and Drew.
Just as Drew and I. And Joe Lane actually eventually kind of pulled... We roped him in. We got him there.
You enticed him, gave him something exciting to work with. And so he comes in and he's playing bass.
He's playing bass, and we're having a great time. And at some point, we're all friends, and it just kind of made sense. Like Jason and Aaron should just join us, and we should just have a big band with 3 guitars and a bass.
So pretty much everyone from that 8th grade talent show ended up inside that band.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
So, and you kind of made that happen, kind of getting all those guys together.
I would say I was a part of it, definitely. I think Drew, had a deep passion. He's always had, Drew's probably had one of the deepest passions for performing music.
Yeah, performing live and rehearsing, and I'm
just
really sticking to it.
Just a dedicated individual, he's inspirational.
Totally.
So, a lot of the reason why I stuck with it was because Drew is so dedicated to it. And of course, Aaron, too. You can't, those 2 guys really were the force behind anything that we did.
Yeah.
So, once we all got together, we kind of started figuring out each other's musical tastes and started to try to write our own music. And
this is all before you guys get into high school.
Yeah, pretty much going right into freshman year.
So you kind of come into high school and you guys are in a band.
We're in a band.
And you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself. Things are going good.
And practicing a lot. I mean, we love to practice. We'd play probably every day. And
4 or 5 days a week. You guys are at someone's house.
Oh, easy.
Yeah.
Easy. We'd play almost every day of the week. And
then when do you start writing original music?
We always dabbled in it. We always had riffs that we would put together, and things didn't really start to come together, though, probably until when we were in 10th grade, And we were kind of moving out of the band that we had formed, which we loosely called Second Hand.
And there is a few recordings floating around of that, right?
There are.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those
definitely
are original songs. That's when you guys started, and you're right there 14, 15 years old writing these songs.
Yes. People out there definitely have these CDs laying in the bottoms of old CD cases.
Out in their garages.
Yeah, or, in CD players that no one uses anymore.
Was it all on CD, or did anything come on tape?
Everything was on CD, I'm pretty sure. I don't think anything ever came out on tape.
And where were those second-hand recordings? How were those put together? Did you record them yourself?
We did, yeah. We had, we called it the Sled. It was this old PV 8-channel mixer, and it had, wood sides to it. This thing was probably out of the 70s, but it worked. And so we would have to bring everything in, mix it down into a couple channels, and then that would get dumped into a Tascam 4-track to tape, and that's where we would mix it down to.
The old PV product seems to always work,
They were solid.
Yeah,
Man.
A lot of that old 80s, early stuff, PV, when you find an amp or any of that stuff, really still seems to work,
Yeah.
So you recorded onto that, dumped it onto the Tascam, and then you had maybe 2 or 3 tracks on that,
right,
to record a full band.
Yep, and then mixed it down, and then I remember I think what we did is we must have somehow recorded it into through the headphone or the mic jack of a computer to get it digitized.
Yeah.
And from there, then we were able to burn it onto a CD. It wasn't easy. You had to have all sorts of adapters and things.
Yeah, these are early days of creating music onto CDRs. That's why I was surprised to hear that it was on CD rather than tape, that early.
Yep.
Late 90s.
Well, and then you had those, you used to be able to print paper labels for your CDs. So.
Oh yeah, and then that would end up jamming in all the CD players. That's why all the CDs are stuck in car stereos that are probably in the junkyard now.
Probably.
Those paper labels. So after Second Hand, you guys get a couple recordings together, and then there's changes in the band, and then that becomes Eminent.
Yep, Eminent kind of comes out of the different tastes of music. There was, I wouldn't call them conflicts. It was just difference of opinions, and people felt that there was things that they would prefer to pursue on their own, and so Eminent kind of was left over with Drew and Aaron and Joe Lane. And Aaron really kind of took the lead on writing Eminent's music, and he's a phenomenal guitar player. He's got a ton of talent, very technical, and it complements Drew's abilities. So
yeah, they could have a very fast, aggressive metal style,
right,
or hard rock style.
And for me, my style is much more laid back. I'm a big chord strummer, blues. Not that I'm really into blues, but just that's more of my style. That's kind of what I bring.
So you were kind of keeping up with these guys.
Yeah, struggling
and adapting to what
exactly
they were trying to do.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so let's take our first break here. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about a little bit about the formation of Eminent, and then what you guys get into throughout high school, and then also gigging around once you guys graduate. So we're going to come right back, talk a little bit more with James. All right, welcome back. And what you just heard was a little taste of James's first band there, Second Hand. That was Close the Day.
Yeah, huge Kirk Hammett fan there with the guitar solos, the double guitar solo.
So that's recorded in one of your guys' houses?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, probably in one of our bedrooms. I almost think that was like Aaron's upstairs house over there off Chardonnay, off Gamay,
right at about
Oakley.
20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that incredible to listen back to that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really cool. Probably, even at the time, or maybe there was a time when you were harsh with it or critical. And then, now looking back, it's like, my God, we were 14 years old recording good songs,
Yeah, and happy about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Couldn't have been happier at that time, right?
And that speaks volumes about kind of where maybe our focus should be today is like getting back to that happy place.
Yeah, and really enjoying something like that.
Exactly.
I don't have a lot of the early recordings I did, but I did a lot of recordings onto tape, from a recorder and just playing guitar and singing over it. And yeah, I would love to hear those now. I'm sure they're not worth a crap, but just to hear and go, God, I was so in love with what I was doing at that moment. And just, it was so important that I did that.
Absolutely.
Sitting at your parents' house and practicing all day just to play a cover song or whatever it was and to pull that out. So really cool to, listen back. And I don't think I've ever heard those recordings, the secondhand recordings. You'd probably say not too many people have, huh?
Probably not. And there's more out there, going to the digital age, it's every year you're like transferring these files and and
putting them on a zip drive, putting them
Right.
on, some sort of storage, putting them in the cloud, whatever it takes now, to hang on to some stuff. But I think a lot of stuff was lost from back then.
I think so. I went back and tried to find, I do this regularly. I get nostalgic and I'm like, I miss engineering, recording engineering, and I go back and look for those old projects, and I find them on CDs, and
you're sitting here right now. We've got about 8 old CDRs with some chicken scratch on them, and kind of looking through them, going, God, man, you did quite a bit with these bands, really cool. So we'll get out of Secondhand like we were talking, and Eminent kind of comes as you're in high school. Now you guys are playing like high school talent shows.
Yep.
And what else are you guys doing? I mean, are you guys playing outside of school functions at this point? House parties, anything?
Yeah, house parties. I remember we played on the dock over there off Sandmound of Natalie Jones's house.
Oh, this is over in Bethel Island.
Yeah, yep. And actually that was a result of us performing, a couple days before at the school for their Showcase of the Arts, 9th grade. We did Wherever I May Roam by Metallica.
The influence was heavy there, huh?
Oh, God. Yeah. We hadn't got into Pantera yet, I think we were on the side, but it wasn't influencing our playing yet.
Yeah.
But, and then we threw in for just a little flavor and to be a little rebellious, Popular by Not a Surf.
Wow.
Yeah. The school officials had cut us off because the bell rang to dismiss everyone, but we just were like, let's just keep playing. So we jumped right into Not a Surf, and the whole audience stayed there and listened. And
loved it.
They loved it. I mean, I think at that time, at that age too, you're not exposed to live music, especially from your peers, and
sure, and maybe if
off.
it was inside the family, but it was just playing, at the bar or at the restaurant, like you had mentioned, you hadn't seen a rock band, and certainly not your friends playing rock and roll.
Exactly. And people were happy to hear it. We sounded pretty good. We had practiced a lot for that show, and then that earned us the gig at
out at the boat ramp. In Bethel Island,
we did, and I remember,
that was as good as getting into Lollapalooza at that time.
Man, we were hanging out with the juniors. We were hanging out with the juniors because we didn't have a singer class back then.
Yeah,
but they were so awesome. We were so happy to be.
Now, was there other bands that stick out? What was the other bands that were around at that time?
At Freedom, there was 2 other bands. There was Aaron Younce band with Tim Clausen and J.P. Mangano and Jeff McDermott. It was called Used Car Salesman. And
those are some
John
old
Lind,
names.
that was the bass player.
Oh, yeah.
John
Lind.
Lind.
That's
and
right.
And then Mike McCullough had a band. And
Submission.
Yeah.
At that time, was it always Submission?
I think so.
Okay, yeah. I remember that band.
And we kind of had like band rivalry, but it was fun.
There was a little bit of feuding,
making
school.
fun of each other, that sort of thing. But I honestly remember, like, if someone needed something, if someone had a problem with gear, all the musicians were happy to help.
Yeah. And everybody had a great musicianship, for being that young. I think all you guys were really well rehearsed, A
lot of practice time.
A lot of nights
I actually
spent
I played bass for UCSM one time at I want to say it was at the snowboard festival, but I can't remember now. So long ago.
Yeah. So you ended up playing with the other bands. So on top of that, I remember one moment that sticks out to me back in that day is when you guys played with Andy Wilson.
Oh, Lord.
Who was a teacher there at the high school. What's your memory of that? Do you have, a good story behind that?
There's excellent, great stories with Andy Wilson. He's one of my favorite professional educators.
Yeah.
He provided us a lot of not only, classic education per the curriculum, but he gave us some extracurricular education as well, and forever thankful to that man. How I met him's kind of funny. I had made some off-color comments about him one day. He was substituting in Mr. Chaponi's geography class, and I had been late, so when I sat down, he kind of barked at me, and so I made a off-color comment, kind of something along the lines of like, if assholes could fly, this place would be an airport, and he didn't appreciate that none too much, so he immediately snapped at me and threw me out of the class with some vulgarity. And as soon as I get out and I can hear the door starting to close, I hear him hit that door, and the door flies open, and he's right behind me, and he flips me around and pushes me against the the cinder block walls there at Freedom, and he's like, "You ever call me an asshole again, I'll kick your fucking ass.
And this is your teacher. You're in ninth grade.
Ninth grade.
And that's your first meeting with this guy.
Yeah.
So it goes on, like you said, to form a great bond.
Oh, man.
And this guy did teach a lot of great life lessons. He still plays music to this day. And what did you guys do? You guys played the talent show. What song? You guys did Guns N' Roses?
Yeah, well, he loved rock and roll. I mean, and he still does to this day, I'm sure. And so once he kind of grew an appreciation for our ability to play covers, because that was kind of one thing that separated us from other bands, is we loved playing covers, so we did it a lot.
Yeah.
And we learned to play our favorite songs and originals too, but we had a passion for it. And so he was like, "Oh yeah, we got to do these talent shows. I want to play Rage."
That's right. Yeah, we also did that one.
Yeah, we did. I think we did No Shelter, and of course we did the Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine,
and this is with him singing, fronting the band.
Yeah, fronting the band, and
wig,
we all got wig. All of us got dressed up as best we could. Leather pants and big hair and. Funny story, right before we went on at Freedom, we were backstage and I found this massive roll of yarn and I thought this is going to be funny, so I took that yarn and I just shoved it down the front of my pants and threw my guitar back over it and, played and
left something more to the imagination.
Oh man. The things we did as kids.
So good times playing all that. And then Eminent starts to get a little bit serious, as you guys are getting out of high school.
Right.
You guys are recording a lot of music, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of originals going on. There was an album that came out?
Yep. Officially, our release of IO came out sometime in 2002, I believe.
Okay. So right after high school, you guys kind of get into gigging outside.
Yeah.
And playing bars.
Yep.
Playing the venues.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some flyers here we're kind of looking at. And it looks like you guys were, out there at the Pine Street.
Livermore, yep.
Yeah.
Not even old enough to go in the place. We had to wait outside until it was our turn to play.
And that was one of your first gigs?
Oh, yeah.
Out and about?
Yep. Pine Street. And then never made the Wallace Arms gig, unfortunately, which was the following week. They ended up canceling it because we had Uncle Eddie on there.
So the Wallace Arms ended up becoming the Mutiny and
right.
really did really well for the scene out here for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so you guys were also playing Roosters Roadhouse.
Roosters, yep, out in Alameda.
Mm-hmm. And what bands are you guys playing with? Was there any, friend bands or?
Every once in a while, yeah, we would be able to go out there. I think we played a show with the Crows, and we were able to play out at the Pound in the city with Poor Bailey and with Dot Commies.
Oh, yeah.
We
Shout
played
out to a lot of the old bands from out here, the Dot Commies,
the big
Poor
bands.
Bailey. And you guys did the RU36 record release show, right?
Yeah. That was a lot of fun.
Now, you would expect that guys wouldn't have been headlining that night, but what happened?
Well, AJ from RE36, great guy. Always looked. I think from the time we were little kids, we always looked up to him, and he's the one that put on that show, obviously, for the release. And we were running a little late. I think we might have showed up about 30 minutes after the point which everyone was supposed to have been there.
Check-in was 6 o'clock or something.
Yeah, and there's there was like 5 bands playing, so there's a lot of gear to get in that place. And since we can't get our gear in now because everyone else was already in front of us, then we show up and we knock on the door and AJ opens it up. And we're like, "Hey man, where should we put our gear?" And he just says, "Why don't you throw it out in the street?" And he turns around and goes back in.
He wasn't real pleased with you guys showing up a little late to his record release. Huh?
Yeah, so we ended up having to play, at the end of the show, and after some big names like, Poor Bailey and the Dot Commies and Chronic Disorder. And then RE36, obviously.
All of which bands are doing great at that time.
Yeah, they had a huge draw. There must have been 150 or 200 people there.
Yeah, the Pound just packed.
Packed.
Yeah. And what record was that coming out?
For them?
Yeah.
I think it was...
it must have been the second record, right?
I think it was the first record. Yeah, the second record I think was Dog Shit and Mints.
Yeah.
But I think it was the one before that, which I'm just drawing a blank
on
right now. Yeah.
And so that was a packed house, and you guys end up going on after them. Is there people there?
Oh, I think our parents.
Oh, my God.
No, I think maybe about like 10% of
But it cleared out.
It cleared out. But people stuck around. The band stuck around and hung out and cheered us on. And that was fun.
Lesson learned, show up on time, right?
I think that was our third gig, so it was still a great experience.
Yeah.
You're getting
very
stage
young
time.
out there playing. Yeah. And playing the Pound, playing a packed house.
Right. And they got a
decent
sound system there. So
very cool. Yeah, that was a great venue. That was a lot of great shows there.
Yep.
So what other concerts early on kind of stick out, or any memories of the Roosters Roadhouse?
The Roosters Roadhouse was always hit and miss.
Yeah.
Sometimes there'd be a good turnout, and especially if there was a band like Happy Ending at the time,
sure.
You'd have a better turnout. They had a better draw, and it would make shows more fun.
Yeah.
It was tough. It's tough to get 19-year-olds to drive out to Alameda, an hour drive.
And you can't even drink at the bar.
You can't drink, yeah.
You got to get your buzz on the way there, and who knows if that's a good idea.
Right.
So you guys end up gigging, and then, like you mentioned, you'd put out the album I.O.
Mm-hmm.
And what was on that album? How many tracks were on that album?
I think that was 6 tracks.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 tracks on I.O. And Aaron and Drew were basically the masterminds behind that album. They wrote a very technical, combination of drum and guitar. And then, of course, Richard Jones, who was a part of Eminent, he was just a phenomenal bass player. And he played a very unique bass. He played a 6-string fretless, electric bass, and it just brought.
He had kind of his own sound.
He had his own sound, and he was into funk too. So he would, play slap bass on this 6-string, fretless bass, and it was just so unique. And I think it made it really special.
Yeah, on the super concise metal kind of stuff that you guys were doing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
I think it was a cool sound. So that record is still out and around.
Oh, floating.
Yeah. People can find that if they wanted to.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I remember we had a huge fan, Joey Gilmore. You remember Joey Gilmore? Man, he came to all of our shows.
He loved it.
And he would have that album playing. He'd have Limit or Disengaged or Feel just blasting out of his truck. Like, it was so
Where was that
fun.
record recorded?
Actually, that was recorded at a friend of ours, Cameron White's house, when he lived over by Melody's Lounge in Oakley, back when that was a bar.
Oh, rest in peace to the Melody's Lounge,
It's
right?
gone, man. Yeah, a lot of great times there. But everyone's got a story.
And that was also engineered by you and Aaron.
Yeah. Yep.
You guys were taking on
at that time,
all the recording at that point.
Right. Yeah. Our equipment had, graduated. I think at that time we finally graduated to a digital audio workstation, a Roland VS 1880. So we had plenty of multi-track capability. Plus,
and you guys did take the courses at LMC to...
that ended up coming a little bit after.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But you both had an interest in learning to record.
All 3 of us did. Aaron, Drew, and myself. And, I didn't really have an interest in going to LMC, but
sure.
Drew and Aaron were, they're like, you need to do something with your life. Like, you can't just get out of high school and do nothing. So they were, I kind of remember them kind of dragging me there,
So you did end up taking the course. A lot of greats have taken that course,
It's a great course.
A lot of good engineers have came out of there.
Great instructors. Rick Shiner was the instructor that I had, and just a phenomenal teacher. Of course, I was a complete jackass and was always... less than sober and screwing around and always making dumb comments. So every opportunity Rick had, he would make fun of me in front of the class, and I deserved it,
So you did take some, though, good lessons outside of...
Absolutely.
To bring into the studio.
I picked up a lot. And so that recording, though, was really the kind of the culmination of everything that we had learned from trial and error, and then what we were picking up from Los Medanos.
Finally getting kind of a good recording out of what you guys were doing, something that you're proud to show everybody.
Right.
And get out and about. Mm-hmm. Now, you ended up taking recording on and recording some other bands.
Yeah.
Outside of that.
Yep.
And that was the other bands that you worked with. Who were we talking about?
So I had the honor to work with the Vamps, which was a all-girl punk band. At the time, I thought, this is awesome. I love what they're doing, and this is.
They were all original songs.
All original songs, and it was a good opportunity to give them a free recording and to help me hone my recording skills.
Yeah, work on your skills.
And then I had the opportunity to work with Hollowhed. Back when.
And that's with Glenn and Brian.
Glenn and Brian and
a couple of my previous guests there in the Hollowhed gang.
Yeah, and the Loper, the bass player. His real name was Spencer Audrey Rainbow Zumwalt. A character, man.
Wow.
He is so much character. That's the only way to put it.
That was Spencer.
That was Spencer.
And what kind of project did they put together? Just a couple songs, or was that
I tell you what, that album is my absolute favorite album of all albums that
that you had worked on,
that I've worked on, and I love listening to it.
Really,
there's so much
stands
energy.
The test of time.
Oh yeah, and the amount of energy that they packed in 9 minutes.
Yeah,
think about an album that's 9 minutes long.
And how many songs was it?
There's 8 songs.
And that was Hollowhed. Was there a name to that album?
I don't
Do you
remember. Yeah, I don't remember if there was a name to that album, but it was. I think they used to call the genre goat metal or something like that.
Yeah,
really funny guys.
A very great band that was playing out here, for a long time.
Awesome
And
band.
Once again, another band that Drew was in,
Right.
and Brian and Glenn, former guests. And I remember seeing Hollowhed at a few different parties, backyard parties or something, and just being like, "Oh my God, what the fuck's going on, dude?" Just,
what am I listening
to? Heavy stuff. But a lot of talent inside of that group too.
Oh, yeah.
You said you also worked with Hucklebuck.
Oh yeah, there was the Hucklebuck project. Yep, another kind of we had musicians from different other projects that kind of came together to do this very intricate, very interesting music. There's no released recordings of it. I think myself and maybe a couple of the guys on the project might have it. I mean, I for sure have it.
I may have heard it at some time, but that was with Rudy and
Rudy
Sean.
Ponce of Omissa, and Sean from, he was from Hollowhed too, and from Civil War, and Drew Cueva, and then Dave from the Crows.
Yeah. Dave from the Crows. Mm-hmm. And was Robbie involved in that?
Oh yeah, Robbie Doccani.
Wow, you really had quite a lineup there.
I'm telling you, all-star
How many
lineup.
songs were recorded in that session?
I think we did 8 in that session as well, and it was like about a 50-minute album,
Oh, wow.
So it's a lot recorded.
Some complex songs.
And really, that album was probably at the peak of our talent, for sound engineering. I mean, they played phenomenally, but we really put a lot of effort into making that a good, a great recording. Not a good
And then
recording.
it never kind of seen the light of day, huh?
I think that other projects took precedence in the long run.
Yeah, everybody was involved in a lot of things at that time.
It was a tough time to be trying to start another musical project for all those guys.
With a bunch of musicians that were in a bunch of bands already.
Right.
So you ended up recording, quite a few different albums, and that was with Sound Image. Is that what you called it?
That's what I dubbed it. Yeah, I actually had a business license from the city of Oakley. Yeah, Sound Image Studios.
And did you have a studio set up, or were you kind of going from project to project?
Well, so I had 2 ways of recording. I had a laptop that had Cubase SX3 on it, and so I could take that with my rack, which had a couple of FirePods in it and, other rack-mounted equipment. And so that was great to go and if someone couldn't come to us, we could go to them.
Yeah, go to their bedroom, go to their garage,
wherever,
their practice studio, whatever it was.
Grab live tracks. But at the condo out in Bethel Island,
you had a setup there.
I had a setup there. Yeah, I had a room dedicated with hard disk recording and with a mixer and with studio monitors, and we really tried to make it as functional as possible. We invested good money into it.
For what means you had,
Yeah, for what means we had.
What projects were done inside that room?
Well, we definitely did the Hucklebuck project, and we did the Hollowhed project.
We're all done out there at the spot in Bethel Island.
And then Clavo Oxidado, actually, we did kind of remotely, kind of there.
You had another band with kind of the same faces in it, right?
Well, yeah, Sean and Robbie and Drew doing another project, which is a really cool project. They recorded one of my favorite songs. They used to call it the Remanger. And I still jam to that song,
I remember having a demo of those guys,
They're
5 or 6
great
songs.
guys. But yeah, that's pretty much. Oh, the Vamps too. The Vamps kind of got recorded in a couple different spots just because of the logistics.
Did that come out?
They released it, probably like at the Epidemic. They probably had a release.
They
party
played a
there.
lot of shows around town and did pretty well when they were playing, right?
Yeah, and listening back, it's interesting music,
And there was decent songs there. I remember hearing it when that came out.
Classic punk rock,
Yeah, very easy stuff.
Very easy stuff. Well, a lot of energy, a lot of punk energy, It's something...
And same like you said with Hollowhed, and that really can,
geez.
really make a band when you have a good energy to it. Right on. Well, we're going to take another break. It's good to kind of talk about the recording and all that stuff you're involved in. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about your entrepreneurship inside a guitar building and also the businesses that you've opened around town and then what's to come next. So we'll be right back, talk a little bit more with James. right. What you just heard was Preppy Death by Hollowhed, recorded there, of course, at the studio out in Bethel Island. Man, listening back to that's got to make you feel pretty good to know you were in a room with that kind of energy, you know?
Oh, jeez. Those guys, man. Yeah.
I mean, do you do listen back to that stuff every so often? All the time.
Well, that album, I definitely listen to it regularly. Actually, I uploaded it to my iTunes, so it's just in my rotation.
Yes, it comes on from time to time when you're listening to the mix.
Yeah, and I love when people are in the car with me and they're just not expecting any of that.
These minute-long blasts of just, howls and screams and growls.
Exactly. Because quite honestly, I don't hear things like that. Definitely not on obviously the radio or anything, but I thought they're just so
Certainly
unique.
Not, yeah. Most folks are not going to have that in their normal rotation of music.
There was 4 vocal tracks for that. Glenn and Brian each had their a set of vocal tracks for them, so they could get
high
those.
and a low.
Yeah, exactly.
Scream.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was. Yeah, I mean, it was crafted really well, and even listening to it, you just go, God, these were cool songs, and they were quick, but they were catchy. As weird as that can sound, for that kind of intensity music and those kind of screams, I was like, this was catchy. It made sense. It had a rhythm to it.
Yeah, those
really
blast beats from the drums. Drew just blowing your eardrums out. It's so awesome.
I'm glad that you were there to capture that and be able to share that years later, and I'm sure those guys really appreciated
I think so.
I think that album was put out and a lot of people heard that, and those guys did really well in the San Francisco area and Oakland, and I know they played a ton of shows.
Yeah, absolutely.
So kind of cool to listen to some of your recordings and talk about those bands, and then aside from playing in the bands and recording them, you guys also took on building the instruments.
We did, yeah.
And where did that come from?
The long and the short of it is in 2010, Aaron had been honing his skills previously down in San Diego with his parents. His father, Henry, had been building guitars for a while, mostly for fun as a hobby.
He never really played guitar, right?
No, he played this one lick, and if he was drinking a little bit, you could get him to play it, and it was awesome.
He'd pick up one of his guitars and kind of jam it out.
Jam it out. It's a quick little lick, like a little finger picking thing that was awesome. And
where had he learned to build guitars?
Well, Henry, once he got back, I believe the story is he after he finished up in Vietnam, he was a captain in the Air Force, and he flew quite a bit in
quite
the
a few missions there.
Oh yeah, he's got some pretty intricate stories, and he came back, and I think the story was he kind of joined a hippie commune and took on repair and the building of acoustic guitars.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Henry's one of those people who can literally do anything.
Yeah.
He was such a huge influence in our lives, just an incredible human being. And still to this day, he's still just
a professional pilot after getting out of the Air Force.
Yeah,
right?
Professional pilot. He flew for Albert Sino for a couple decades, flew that guy all over the country up to his ranch. I think it was in Nevada.
Incredible stories, right?
Oh, man. Just... I can't say enough good things about Henry. And of course, Nancy, too, Aaron's mother. Like, the two of them really provided a place for us to learn and grow this craft.
Yeah, what an incredible
guitars.
Skill to learn from your father,
Right.
Or, Aaron's father in this case, So he picked that up, hanging with a bunch of hippies.
Right.
And just took on, without even playing the guitar, really.
Yes.
Just decided, I can take care of that for you guys, or I can repair your guitars. Well, shoot, why don't I build them, from scratch?
Exactly. And fast forward to 95, and I think that's around the time when he made some of his first electric guitars that at least I'm aware of. Like there's Aaron's Stratocaster that he built, and there was Jason Honecker's Flying V.
Yeah.
There was a guitar he built for David Greenwald, which I think was a white Stratocaster, and a couple others.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm missing a few. And so we kind of grew up with that, right? Watching him build, and then we kind of started getting into the repair work. And
he built them right there at the house?
Right in the house,
yeah.
Yep, carved them all and even dried some of the wood. He would dry them out a little bit in a little cabinet he built with a little heat lamp.
Cured the wood and everything, huh?
Yeah. And then so if we fast forward, the Younce family relocated down to Southern California, and Aaron was down in Carlsbad, and Aaron really got interested in building some guitars for himself. So he built himself a handful of classics. Like he's got an Explorer, all mahogany Explorer. The thing's dope as hell. A Les Paul. He's built a Telly. And so he kind of really learned his trade, and then he started designing, and he designed that, I don't know what the inspiration was. I look at it, and I kind of think it's an MCS or kind of inspired guitar. It's on our website, maretguitars.com, MaretGuitars. And from that, Aaron realized, like, I can build guitars for other people. So
yeah, and design them.
Design them, yeah. He possessed the skill sets and the talent, and so he secured a couple commissions, to build guitars. And in 2010, I told him, like, hey, man, I mean, why don't we collaborate on this, and let's build a small shop here in Oakley and start this little...
And that's when you put together Maret Guitars, and the idea kind of seen its fruition there.
It's been growing, and, in the beginning, him and I were very adamant about building just Maret Guitars.
Just your own designs.
Just our own design. And, of course, we still have that passion. These days, though, we're exploring maybe a more unique route.
Yeah.
So, Maret Guitars has been working with a couple artists who have been hand-painting their artwork on our guitar bodies. And 2 guitars have been painted by a guy, a very talented painter named Greg Silverman out in Brooklyn.
Based out of Brooklyn. He does photorealistic paintings of classic cars, and he's got a pretty long list of commissions that he's done. So he... what kind of piece of art did he put on the guitar?
Well, we went with... on one guitar, we went with the 1950 Buick Super. Beautiful looking car. Again, you can see it.
Are these available? Yeah, on the website.
Yeah, on the website.
Out? Very cool.
And then the other one we went with, and I forget the year. I want to say it's a mid '60s VW bus, an orange bus. Again, very cool. And pretty soon we'll have pictures coming up of the latest guitar, which we actually collaborated with a local artist, extremely talented guy. Just can't say enough about his artwork. Chris Hanway.
Very cool. Yeah,
he's
really
awesome.
Wanted to get him in here. I'll have to contact
that guy.
Should. Yeah. Great artist from out here.
Inspirational guy. I think back of just kind of crossing paths with him, from very early age, and we never really, made a connection, but, going on this collaboration and just getting to know him just a little bit, meeting him a couple times now, and it's really an honor to know the guy.
Yeah, cool.
So talented.
So you're building the guitars. You're also doing repair work on them.
Yeah,
right?
Repair work is kind of like the bread and butter. That's where the money comes in and kind of keeps the motivation and the business going.
Keeps you busy with it.
Keeps you busy. Plus, you keep working on those skills and you learn more. You're always getting different projects and different guitars. And
meeting the local guys, the musicians, the people that are trying to do, the cool things inside the area.
Yep, and network.
Yeah. So you guys are still building guitars now.
We are. We're kind of on a different path now. We're kind of more in an investment stage. We're getting ready. Basically, we're going to take all the wood inventory we have and we're going to carve it up and turn it into guitar components that then will be ready to assemble these guitars much more quickly, a more efficient process.
Yeah, into whatever fashion the commission might ask for.
Exactly. If it needs custom inlay work or if it needs custom paint job or whatever, we kind of have all of the heavy lifting, which the heavy lifting being the milling and processing of the raw lumber, and, of course, then the carving down into the actual body shape and the routing of all the cavities.
It's kind of the most time-consuming
thing that's there. It's the dirtiest part.
Very cool. Yeah, and then Aaron, he also went aside and kind of honed the craft outside of, his father's skill set and what you and him had put together, and ended up working for Fodera.
In Brooklyn.
Out in New York,
yeah. He worked with an incredible luthier out there, Vinny Fodera. The guy's been building these incredible basses for, 35-plus years, and Aaron worked right alongside with him and
put in a couple years out there, right?
Yeah, I want to say he was at least 4 years.
Very cool. Yeah, the Fodera basses, those things are pretty expensive, aren't they?
Oh,
those things run $5,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, mm-hmm. They got a hefty price tag. I got an opportunity to check out the shop, and it was just, you're blown away. You go in there, and you're just like, so many amazing people have bought basses from this amazing bass builder.
Yeah.
There's like so much history here. You almost don't even feel worthy to be in kind of that environment. And like Aaron works there on a daily basis. Like that's his grind, you know?
Yeah, there all day, every day, hanging with those guys and building for, those names.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very cool. And then outside of that, he ended up moving on to New Orleans, right?
He did, yeah. He ended up making
What company is he with now out there?
He joined forces with an old colleague of his, Benjamin Strange, back from the days when he did repair work at SF Guitar Works. Him and Benjamin joined forces down there in New Orleans and started a repair shop, and they've just been growing like wild weeds out there, man. They are
great.
just taking off. Yeah, doing a great job.
What's the name of that shop?
Strange Guitar Works.
Okay.
Yep, and they do phenomenal work. Those two guys just, if you want your guitar done right, like those are two of the people who you could absolutely trust, no doubt.
That are passionate about delivering.
Extremely passionate, very tedious, a ton of experience, the right equipment. And the other cool thing about those guys is they invent tooling to do a job better, to do a job right. And that speaks a lot about,
engineer their own tools.
Yeah.
To make sure that everything is done in the best manner that can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So then, even outside of building the guitars, you still find time, and you've opened a business here kind of loosely named after a band that you had recorded, the Vamps.
Yeah. So the story with that is from as long as I can remember, little kid, I've always had this passion to own and operate a business.
It's kind of just a DIY ethic on everything for you, everything. I mean, you learn it, and then you've got to be, you got to be the guy that creates it.
Yes. And my now sister-in-law, Katie, she was a stylist. Went through cosmetology school, got out, got a job at a regular, salon called Regis, and it was over in the mall. And she had expressed a lot of the challenges about not being able to grow there and not having support,
having to rent a chair and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and in that case, she was an employee.
Okay.
And me having this kind of entrepreneurial, outsider perception, I'm like, well, what if I invest the money to build a place that you could work in and you do what you want?
Yeah, and flourish.
Yeah, and flourish. Yeah. And so I talked it over with, my beautiful wife, Erica, and she was a little reserved about, making this
big investment inside of a world that you had no experience in.
Right. I'm like, hey, I've got no experience operating a business. I don't know anything about the hair salon industry. I just want to take money and build a salon, and I want you to quit your job and run it.
Yeah. And I'll have this here for you and your sister to take on.
And I realized that you don't do hair,
Yeah.
And so, once we wrote our business plan and we started to look at the numbers and, we found a place, it kind of was like, let's do this. Like, let's take the risk.
It started to make sense.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer that you can't gain anything without taking some risks.
Yeah, definitely.
You got to make yourself a little vulnerable. So
the best payoffs in life, right? They come from some risk.
Yeah. It's funny because, it's a gamble, right?
Yeah.
It comes down to gambling. But so the Vamps, right? Since Katie was in the Vamps, and it's a great name. The band was called the Vamps, and we did a little research on what the Vamps are outside of what people think about vampires, right?
Sure.
So that's usually the first place people go. But a vamp, though, is really kind of this feminist from the 20s, kind of a very emboldened, empowered woman, who we even kind of came up with a definition for it. She kind of uses her beauty and her feminism to get what she wants, so Vamp Salon, it kind of fit, the whole thing was like, that's what we need to call it.
So that's now been open since 2010 in Oakley. 2011. Okay.
November 5th, 2011, we opened the doors.
And people can call down there, get their appointments. They can check it out online. I'm sure it has all the Facebooks, the Instagrams, all that stuff
Instagram,
going on.
The Faceagram or Instabook or whatever they call it these
you
days.
Can find it, huh? Cool, so the business is going well?
The business is flourishing. I mean, it wasn't an easy road. Let me tell you, the first 3 to 5 years were...
You had some doubts.
Holy cow, man. But really... what it comes down to is Erica and Katie's determination to make it succeed.
Just the hard work paying off.
Absolute dedication, hard work, not giving up,
sacrifice.
Oh, God, the sacrifice, man. It's hard to articulate what you have to do to make a business survive. And when all you hear is, oh, most businesses fail in, the first year, first 2 years, first 3 years. Like all these, like now I get it. Yeah, that's why.
Because getting into that routine of sacrificing all your time.
Yes, you have to be committed to like either I'm going to die or this business is going to make it.
Yeah. And they've made that commitment, and
holy cow,
things have started.
I'm really proud of them.
Things are going in the right direction.
Yeah, what they have done is made my dream of owning and operating a business possible.
Yeah,
and my contribution to the business, although in the beginning was mostly monetary, I also did the build out, as part of the construction of the retail space that we put the salon in, and my roles now are, business manager. I do all the accounting and the bookkeeping and payroll, and I make sure that we're in
very
compliance.
Cool. How many employees are you guys got
officially?
over there?
We have 1 employee. And we have 3 booth renters.
Awesome.
And we're gearing up to add more staff now. We do have some challenges in its location. It's across the street from Rayleigh's and Oakley in that Main Street Shops.
Yeah.
Shopping center. The parking is limited.
Sure.
So
there's always obstacles to overcome.
Yes.
But very exciting to hear about that. And so everyone check out the Vamp Salon. Check out Maret Guitars. Both can be found online. So outside of all of this, you're facing some new challenges this year.
Yeah, the challenges that you never think will happen to you. I'm one of those people who thought, never me.
And that's at a young age, the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
Tell us what you ran into.
So I had a couple months of just feeling ill, run down, fever constantly, maybe about 30, maybe even 40 days. And we were in a huge, what we call an outage at the power plant that I work at full-time. And we were rebuilding this plant after we had a catastrophic failure early in 2017.
So take a step just to think, you're running, these other businesses, you're building guitars, and on top of this, you've been carrying a full-time job through all of this at a power plant.
Right. 12-hour shifts, graveyards and day shifts rotating every week.
Yeah. So busy guy.
Yeah. And then the power plant, fails catastrophically, and then now we're in this 11th month long, working every day, 84 hours a week, sometimes 14, 15 hours a day. We get the unit finally running again. We get the plant back online, and this is early January. And now people and myself are starting to say, okay, let's examine my health. And I agree to go to urgent care, and I go on January 2nd. Urgent care doctor takes one look at me and says, oh, that looks like a sinus infection. Hands me antibiotics and shoves me out the door, and
pushes you along.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, let me take these antibiotics.
Let's try this.
10 days of that, and I'm just not getting better. I'm getting worse. So a couple of colleagues at work tell me, look, man, you need to go find some serious medical attention. There's something wrong with you. There's no way.
These are guys that have worked with you forever.
Yep. Had known me, and they know my personality. They can see this shift, and an odd thing, like my belt was down 2 more loops, I had just lost weight and didn't even realize it. So I go back to urgent care January 12th, and Dr. Denoa, a great guy, probably, saved my life by being so observant. He noticed this lump in my neck and said...
Just by looking at you from a distance from across the room.
As soon as he walked in, it's the first thing he noticed. And he's like, hey, man, I just want to talk to you about what is going on in your neck. He's like, I understand that you're not feeling well. He's like, but you have a lump in your neck that's concerning me. So I'll be happy to talk to you more about what you think's going on, but I need you to go next door and have a CT scan of your head, neck, and chest. He's like, once we get that, then we can maybe look at what else is going on. I'm like, okay, no problem. Go next door, do the CT scan stat.
Which is just a computer X-ray.
It's a computerized X-ray, yeah. And it shows up soft tissue, Fast forward a couple hours, I get a phone call that changed my life. Doctor says, look, I don't want to alarm you, but you've got some masses in your chest, and you need to drop what you're doing now, and you need to go to the emergency room. He's like, get your wife or whoever, get someone to take you to the emergency room. I've already called them and let them know you're coming.
Where are you at when you get that call?
I had just walked out of Rayleigh's. I just was going about my day, regular day, get
grocery shopping.
Yeah. I get into the truck and the phone rings. And after I hung up with them, I just kind of sat there and was like, what the heck? What is going on?
It's obviously a little bit deeper than the...
I thought it was walking pneumonia.
Sure.
So I grabbed the wife next door. I go over to the salon and tell Erica, I'm like, hey, the doctor says I need to go to the ER and they want someone to drive me there. So Can you leave?
Let's hit the road.
Yeah. So she turns her client over to our assistant, Myra, and we hop in the car and we go over there. And this is when I started to panic a little bit, because usually you get to the ER and they throw a wristband on you and then you go to the waiting room and you sit there. Yeah. This time they threw the wristband on me and took me right to the back.
There was no waiting.
And I'm like, what in the heck is going on? And I do another CT scan where they scan head, neck, chest, abdomen, and pelvis. And then that's when the ER doctor came in about 3 hours later and said, you definitely have cancer, and it's bad, and you can't leave. You're going to have to stay here in the ER, and we need to, get an oncologist to come in here and start reviewing your chart and seeing what appropriate actions need to be taken immediately. And it's Friday at like 9 o'clock. And
this is the first time cancer had been brought up.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. And I remember just looking at the doctor and I said, thanks, doc. It is what it is. I guess this is what we got to deal with.
They wanted immediate attention.
Yeah.
Immediate treatment.
Exactly. Yep. So the hospital,
what was the diagnosis?
So they couldn't diagnose me.
Okay.
Because they needed to perform a PET scan, which is, photon emissions topography, and positron emission topography. It's a scan that allows them to see the cancer in your whole body, and that's how they stage you. Yeah, they can see the size and the intensity, and when they say your scan lit up, it's because you have like these bright orange spots on the scan in your body, and that's where the cancer is. And then to tell what kind of cancer, they have to do a biopsy. So they ended up sticking this like 1 inch, 2 inch needle that's like an eighth inch thick in diameter into my neck, and taking out 3 massive core samples of this tumor that was in my neck. And in a couple of days they came back. And they said it's Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4. Well, initially they thought it was stage 2, but subsequent scans showed that there was what they call hypermetabolic activity in my femur bone.
So it had growth from your neck across your chest,
yeah,
all the way down into your legs.
Yes, into the bone, which is a very odd place for it to metastasize, but one of those rare cases,
Sure, so it's in the blood, it's in the bones.
Yes, and that's a good point. Hodgkin's lymphoma is a white blood cell cancer, if I understand it correctly. You do so much research and you read so many things, and
sure,
my understanding of it is that it's a blood cancer of basically your white blood cells, your B and your T cells, and they mutate in a way where they're not very effective at doing the jobs that they need to do, but they also cause these masses to grow in your lymphatic system.
Wow, so they're not working properly, and they're creating these growths.
Exactly. And then, 15 years ago, you hear the doctors talk about it like it's a death sentence.
Stage 4.
Stage 4, and this kind of lymphoma, very rare. Non-Hodgkin's is less rare. It's the more common, but it's actually a little bit harder to treat. With Hodgkin's lymphoma, they've actually figured out pretty well how to use chemotherapy to treat it. You'll never hear them use the word cure. It's always treatable.
Yeah, it's all treatments.
Yeah.
So you go directly into that.
So, unfortunately, and I only say this because of the psychology of like accepting that you have cancer.
What was that like when you hear
life-changing?
You expect the worst, or you dread the worst.
You dread the worst, and your mind goes there. And now a really weird thing is you kind of like take on this responsibility of having to tell people about it who care about you, and you don't want to hurt them. You don't want to make them worry, but it's so overwhelming to internalize that you feel like you can't hold it in. Like you have to talk to people about it. You have to get it out. You have to put light on it.
Yeah. And break this tough news to your family and friends and loved ones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I got diagnosed January 12th. I didn't start chemo treatment until March 16th. So I had, 2 months almost to like dwell on my health, and and you think like, well, what did I do to myself? Like, is this my fault?
What could have caused this?
What could have caused it? You're playing the
blame game. How am I going to get through it?
How am I going to get through it? What's chemo going to be like?
And doing all those research, like you said, sitting online,
reading
Google all day and all night, and seeing what's ahead.
Yeah.
So you get into the treatment in March.
Yes. Yeah.
And ends up doing pretty well for you.
I had a remarkable response to the treatment, so remarkable that my oncologist didn't believe the PET scan. Like she had to go back a couple times and really in her mind try and grasp like how I could have had that, great of a response. And I think that a lot of it has to do with kind of a person's attitude towards it.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to do the chemotherapy and then to go to an extremely dark place, a place that's hard to even describe. Your mind goes to, like, I can't survive this, so I'm not going to.
And then that might even be what takes some people down.
I think so. I think that then it becomes kind of this snowball effect. And, you hear people, I'm going to fight this, right? And I think that means something. I've heard that, you're going to fight cancer? How are you going to fight cancer? But now having gone through chemo, I'm like, okay, what you're fighting is the mental anguish that you're going through. The chemo is no
not
joke.
Giving up. And when you start saying that, your body physically may, start to respond in the way that you're speaking.
Yes. And then looking back in hindsight, and I use this in my cancer support group that I go to, put on by the cancer support community. I always say now, like, looking back, what I really did was I took control of things that I could control. And
just what was available to you to control.
You can control how much water you drink. You can control
your diet.
You can control getting out of bed. Even though some days I'd have to force myself out of bed. Oh, that's a whole nother twist to the story. So I found out I had cancer January 12th. January 20th, I pulled a muscle in my back, being stupid, trying to lift a heavy box. And I have never been injured like that before. That was so intense. I could not get out of bed.
So you're bedridden right after getting this horrible diagnosis
and
due to a back injury.
And it was bad. Like, I had to roll out of bed, and I could barely move. And I was trying some different exercises to try and stretch my back out, and I ended up actually pulling a groin muscle at the same time.
I guess it's just getting old, huh?
Holy cow, man. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
So through all this, you say you end up taking pretty well to the treatments. And you were going to fight it. You decided that. And so what do you think about the positivity and what has been your plan of action that you think has been successful so far in these first few months?
So definitely it was, like I said, taking control of what you can. So I immediately went and started a very green diet.
Sure.
Lots and lots of vegetables, even juicing them and making horrible amounts of green juice. Like 80 ounces of just awfulness.
And just powering it down.
Yeah, every day, just powering it down. Eating the lemons, like eating the entire lemon off my tree. The rinds too.
Yeah.
Like all of it.
Taking the natural organic lemon out of the backyard and just eating that thing down like it's an apple.
Peeling 5 garlics every day and eating those. And full disclosure, I'm not advocating for anyone to go and do these kinds of things, and I'm not even sure of the effectiveness.
Sure. But it called to you in the moment. It called
to me because it was mentally the thing that I could do. It felt like I was taking control, even though, quite honestly, I don't think we really have control of anything. Sure. I think stuff is happening to you and you react to it.
But you're fighting in a way that called to you.
Exactly.
With a little bit of diet and whatever tricks you could kind of come up with inside your mind at that time.
Yes.
And so you've went through how many treatments?
I was scheduled for 12 treatments. After I completed 8, which took 16 weeks to complete because I would do 1 treatment every 2 weeks.
Which is a pretty strenuous schedule, isn't it?
I tell you what, the chemotherapy itself takes 6 hours, and they pump it in through this port that's in my chest.
Oh, wow.
So that's where the IV goes, and it takes about 6 hours to pump about 9 bags through, this IV in a pump, and it wipes you out for 10, 15, 12 days.
You're completely exhausted.
Nauseous, psychotic.
Wow.
Just hanging on to reality any way you can. And angry. And then, Thursday comes around and you're like, oh my God, I'm starting to feel okay. And it's like, chemo's tomorrow. Crap.
Wow. Yeah.
Started
so
over.
You hit it hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I was on 4 chemo drugs, and the drug names are pretty interesting. It's adriamycin, bleomycin, vinblastine, and dacarbazine. Like all things that sound like they should be in your body, right?
Yeah. It sounds like something to clean the engine in your car. That's what it sounds like.
Well, and one of them, I think the vinblastin or the adriamycin, I can't remember now, but it's like this bright red color, like the color of these scissors here. And
Wow.
it also dyes your urine that color. And even when I think about it, like I get a little sick, like it makes me nauseous to remember back to that. Yeah, there's a lot of things like that make me just want to throw up again. So
you've pulled through the chemotherapy at the moment.
I pulled through. So I completed 16 weeks, and my PET scan showed that I had gone from a stage 4 back to a stage 1, and there's only a little bit of cancer left in my chest and in my femur bone. It's pretty much all gone.
Wow, that's incredible.
So
we're very happy to hear all that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And I hope our listeners agree, man.
I always tell people, like, mercy was taken upon me. Like, for whatever reason, like someone took it easy on me.
Yeah.
As hard as it was still, it was taken. Mercy was taken on me, to say the least. The doctor didn't feel that the additional 4 chemo treatments would cause the remaining cancer to go away any faster, and there's more of a risk of hardening your lung tissue because these drugs are pretty hard on the body. So
it was best to kind of skip those.
Skip those for now. They're postponed right now, and I'll have another PET scan, and that's kind of my life, for the next 5 years.
And how are you feeling?
I feel a little better every day.
A little stronger,
and gaining perspective on life every day, like gaining appreciation for the smaller things, and realizing that working as hard as I worked at the power plant, to make a buck maybe wasn't the best path. I mean, it got me to where I am, and I'm obviously forever grateful, but maybe it's time for a change. Maybe I need to take a look at my health a little bit better and do something that's better for me.
And that's going to be your next plan of action.
Yes. Yep. I've turned in my resignation at the plant.
Wow, after 15 years, working a fantastic job.
A
high level of pay,
a ton of
group of people.
Great people, a great crew. I've made some amazing friendships with these guys over the years, and but
something's called to you that it says,
it's time to change.
Maybe take a break from those 14, 16, 18-hour shifts and the weekends and the holidays and the nights and all of that.
We joke, we all, me and the other guys on the crew, we say, this is a young man's job.
Well, here in your mid-30s, I guess you've aged out of it, huh?
Yeah, barely, and we should acknowledge the guys that are still in their 50s and 60s doing that line of work, but
yeah, I could only imagine it's got to be really tough pulling those shifts.
It can be.
So you plan to pull out of there?
Right. So I gave them 5 months heads up notice, be out of there. My last day I've got tentatively set for April 1st, and I'm just going to take some time off work. I'm going to focus on the salon, focus on Maret Guitars, and kind of see what the universe brings me.
Yeah, kind of capture some of that early love that you had for the music, for the developing your own businesses. And kind of come full circle into that passion that we were talking about feeling when we were 14 and 15 years old, discovering things.
Yeah, exactly.
And kind of allow your life open to that.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said about over controlling things. Up to this point in my life, I have always tried to have control over it, and I'm kind of starting to correlate the two. Like maybe that intensity is a part of the breakdown of my physical body.
It could be the stress
that you internalize. For me, I kind of voluntarily took the stress on.
Sure, you took on a difficult job or with a very strenuous schedule.
And then couple all the other stresses that every single one of us has in their life. People, they got mortgages and they got children and they've got
businesses and family and regrets and
when you think about how that affects you in your daily life, maybe you take the shortcut on your diet today. Maybe you don't eat so healthy.
Sure.
Maybe you do that 10, 15 days in a row. Maybe
10 years in a row, right?
Yeah, or you forget to drink water. All these things. To me, I'm starting to realize that stress probably really is the foundation here of all of our health problems.
Yeah, I would say.
It's at least something to consider.
Without a doctorate or a degree, I think you might have a lot of knowledge in that statement, especially what you've been through.
Yeah.
So what do you look forward to here in the the coming years?
Well, I'm looking forward to growing and expanding the salon and getting it to where we have a very talented crew. I mean, we have a talented crew now, but we want to expand it, and we want to offer them more education and training and make them more independent. It's always been kind of a drive for us to provide training to the stylists so that way they could grow and ultimately outgrow us.
Become their own business owner.
Yeah.
Become their own chair. Become their own salon.
Exactly. And so there's a lot of that. But part of that is if we can get them to manage the salon business for us, then we can maybe take a step back and allow that space for them to grow. But it would allow us to kind of grow in our own way.
Take other ventures on.
Yeah. Like maybe starting a family.
Yeah.
It
could be
Eric
ahead.
and I talk about it all the time.
Yeah, it might be the time now, huh?
We're still, healthy enough. And
yeah, it's still got our youth, at least some of it left.
Right.
Well, I think you got a lot of, of wisdom that, out of your years, and especially in this last year. And I think, a lot of excitement ahead of you and adventure, And, I encourage all of our listeners to check out, both your businesses, Maret Guitars and also the Vamp Salon. And, if anyone's going to take anything away from, today's episode, kind of allow the universe, like you said, to kind of guide you. And I think those were some good words, and take risks.
Yeah, take risks, take risks in the opportunities that are presented to you.
Yeah.
And you kind of got to be awake and open and be observant of the opportunities that are around you.
Yeah, I think they're abundant for everyone, if you keep an eye. Any last words you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Nope. It's been an honor to be on your show, Ryan. I really appreciate having this opportunity to come out and chat with you.
Right on, man. I think you had a great history, going from way back in those early bands, and then talking about, all the businesses that you've created inside and outside of music, listening to some of your recordings, pretty good time. And thank you for sharing your, your recent battle and hopefully your recent, defeat of the cancer.
Absolutely. We're headed that way. I don't have any doubt in my mind. Kind of the thing of it is for me now is that this has always been my life, so just enjoy what you have. Enjoy right now.
Right on, man. And we look forward to see what's next for you. I thank all of our listeners for tuning in. This is 80 West signing out.